Hello, and welcome to Lawless Conversations with Katie. I'm Katie, your host. This podcast goes through various difficult subjects such as abortion, gun control, prison systems, or gender, to name a few, and dives into all different aspects of the arguments that might be offered or discussed. At the moment, we are wading our way through the subject of abortion, and today we will talk about contraception. Although I have spent a lot of time and effort into researching these topics, I am by no means an expert on this subject or any other subject I will explore in the future. So take my thoughts with a grain of salt, and of course, if you have any questions or things to add, please share them. I try my best to keep my own biases out of these explorations, and because I'm talking about many aspects of a subject, including opposing ideas and arguments, know that these are not necessarily ideas that I subscribe to or hold personally. I will, however, explore different arguments as if I do believe in them in order to truly explore all facets of this subject. Finally, because these are difficult subjects, there will be some content that is hard to hear and might be triggering. Please understand I am not looking to insult anyone, but to explore these subjects openly and honestly. I don't want to convince anyone to think like me. I want to convince people to think, period. So without further ado, come have a lawless conversation with me. If someone has not brought up the option of abstinence, then oftentimes the other argument that comes up with abortion is contraception. Why don't you just protect yourself better? And then you wouldn't get pregnant and wouldn't have to worry about abortion. So this section we're going to look at the options available in contraception. Birth control was an amazing invention and has grown by leaps and bounds towards offering women and families the option of choice. Various contraceptive methods have limitations, though, which lead to a whole other set of discussions. Let's start with condoms. They are a great way to limit disease and protect from unwanted pregnancy, but they are faulty oftentimes and cannot be the primary source of protection. Condoms as well are less likely to be used because they limit the pleasure for both parties in sex. This might seem like a trivial way to look at it, but the reality of pleasure in sex is going to often outweigh the uncertain protection of condoms. This is one of those aspects of reality that sometimes gets ignored. One cannot just look at the most ideal scenarios. Instead, one has to be willing to approach the subject and all its aspects realistically. And realistically, condoms suck for both parties, limiting the likelihood that they're going to be used. There are many hormonal choices for contraception that are available for women, though none have yet been distributed for men. This divide in available contraception is one factor that keeps the playing field imbalanced. Contraception continues to be seen as a woman's job, putting most of the focus of choice in her hands. Equally, the choice is taken away from men by the sheer fact of contraceptive options wholly unavailable to them. If contraceptives were available to men to the same degree that they are available to women, then there would be even less need for abortion. Although the choice of abortion is physically a woman's issue, that does not mean that all aspects of it should also be solely placed on women, be it contraception, birth, or abortion, or the consequences after said choice. In the same sense as with abstinence, it takes both men and women to really make a difference. This is one of those areas that people often don't think about because we haven't had to think about it until recently with the discussions of Roe v. Wade and abortion being taken away as a choice. There is a clear imbalance of men not having a choice in this subject because they don't have available birth control. And women having to carry the burden of birth control on their own, essentially. Most men do not have to think about contraception because a woman is already on it. In order to really talk about the issue of abortion and come to some common ground, there has to be a better balance in both control over when someone gets pregnant and reality of the consequences if someone does get pregnant or does not. Hormonal birth control brings to the surface bodily ailments that can and has adversely affected many women. For example, after sustained use, some women can have trouble conceiving when they do want children. Some women are so sensitive to the hormones that they cannot take hormonal birth control. These sensitivities can range from extreme mood swings to issues with blood clots. Choosing protection is not always an easy choice when faced with unwanted pregnancy or an imbalance in one's body that can have lasting effects. This is an aspect of the contraceptive choice that many people did not think of when they offer it as a solution to abortion. They think contraception has been effective for many years, so it must be a good solution. But the problem is, it is not an easy choice or an easy solution to this issue, because of the issues that hormonal control brings up. Because of this, there are various stigmatisms that women grapple with that add to the stress of the choice of contraception. For example, if a woman knows that birth control has adverse effects on her body, it might cause extreme mood swings, or she might have weight gain that is uncontrollable and affecting her life in other ways, be it depression or just struggle to find a good diet, and thus it affecting her gut and other areas. Then she might try, say, the rhythm method and the use of condoms instead of a hormonal birth control. Statistically, the pill has a 1 in 15 chance of failure, whereas a menstrual and ovulation observance has a 1 in 4 failure rate. Although she is making a better choice for her bodily health, when the subject of abortion is discussed, she might feel as if she is not doing enough to protect against it. Thus, her choices are abstinence, bodily harm, or higher risk of pregnancy. The complexity of the contraceptive choice is different for every person, but it is by no means easy for everyone. And really, it's not easy for anyone. And anyone who wants to say that it is an easy choice does not understand this complexity. Education is a key factor in this area as well. Not to pick on the men, but many men have varying degrees of understanding and knowledge about contraceptives in all areas of availability, effectiveness, application, responsibility, and women's bodies as a whole. They do not have to think about contraception, as I said before. They do not have to think about contraception because their partner is already on some form of birth control. However, by educating men about the efficacy and effects of birth control, they would be better equipped and possibly more willing to use other solutions such as vasectomies or male birth control when it does become available. Without education, though, this subject remains primarily a woman's issue, when in reality, it is an everyone issue. I'm going to digress here a little bit, but it's an important rabbit hole that I will also revisit later on. Online, one can find myriad sources of quotes from men in relation to women's bodies, menstruation, pregnancy, birth, and all other subjects. Just go to YouTube and search crazy things men have said about women's bodies, and you will find some of them funny and some of them cringeworthy. For example, some men think that women have actual eggs, like a chicken has, with a shell. Some men think that women can mentally stop their menstruation when they go swimming, for example, because they don't understand how tampons work. And you might think it's not important for a man to know how a tampon works, but in some instances, this lack of understanding in men has caused actual marital issues and arguments because men don't understand that she can't just mentally stop her bleeding when she's swimming. She actually uses a device. Obviously, not every man is as lost about women and their reproductive functions, but the fact that there is such incorrect knowledge about it means there is a large gap of understanding that needs to be closed. This ignorance is not just on the side of men either. There are many women of all ages who do not understand how ovulation works. There will be a different section on the education ideas to bridge the gap for both men and women, but that is too broad and far-reaching of a subject to address right now. There are other methods of birth control beyond hormonal changes as well. However, they are less commonly used because they are much less effective. Two of these methods are coitus interruptus and the rhythm method. Like I said, neither one of these are foolproof, though one can be slightly more effective than the other. Coitus interruptus involves a man removing himself from the woman just before ejaculating. It relies on the willpower of the man and a knowledge about his body that some men have not achieved, and a knowledge about women's bodies that some women do not have either. For example, knowing when you're ovulating and how that might affect when you get pregnant. Thus, this option is very risky. There's also the risk, even though quite small, of pre-ejaculate causing pregnancy as well. The rhythm method is when a woman understands her menstrual and ovulation cycles well enough to quite accurately, in most cases, predict and see the signs of when the short window of ovulation will occur and the most risk of pregnancy is present. This can be an effective method. However, there are various things that limit its effectiveness, such as human error, stress, diet, environment of or around a woman, which can change her cycles and cause incorrect calculations. To protect against unwanted pregnancy is a choice that has a variety of options, and it is a wonderful choice, and we are so lucky to have that option and have that choice. But none of these options come with a full measure of protection or peace of mind. And contraception is not an overall fix to the abortion issue. As for the questions for this week, we're talking about contraception. So tell me, what has birth control given you? Period regulation, sexual freedom, etc. What side effects did you experience, if any? Also, are the side effects you experienced something you consider okay for men to experience as well when a male contraceptive is distributed? Share your thoughts with me. If you are interested in commenting about this episode or answering any of the questions I just asked, you are welcome to. You can either send me an email at lawlessconversations@yahoo.com. That is LAWLESSCONVERSATIONS@yahoo.com. You can also comment on Twitter at lawlessconvos, LAWLESSCONVOS. Finally, you can also contact me on Facebook if you just look for Lawless Conversations, 2 different words, LAWLESSCONVERSATIONS. I look forward to hearing from you. The references to any sources that I use in each episode will be available in the bio, along with all of these social media connections. Join me next week as we dive into sterilization and the morning after pill. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I look forward to next week.